My daddy uses Anchor to publish his podcast, and he loves it. Not only can he record, edit, and distribute on this platform, but he can make money at the same time, all for free. If you too would like to get started on your own podcast, go to the website anchor.fm or download the free Anchor app. Don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. Let's go!
Welcome to another episode of the Third Eye Podcast, the podcast that is dedicated to open dialogue regarding the difficult topics that we all face in life. I am your host, Marcus Callahan, and thank you very much for joining me this evening. Welcome back to another episode of the Third Eye Podcast. I hope you all are being safe and practicing social distancing. COVID-19 or the coronavirus continues to progress in the United States and other countries. It has yet to really hit its peak, so we could be feeling the effects of this virus for months to come. This is really troublesome because so many people are out of work right now. Our economy has essentially come to a halt. And beyond that, so many people are getting sick and our hospitals can barely keep up. I would like to thank all of those out on the front line right now who are working to combat this virus, and especially to those who cannot go home to their families. Thank you all for trying to keep us safe, and it is our duty to help them by staying home as much as possible. I actually really hated the idea of self-quarantining, mainly because this past weekend was my wife's birthday, and I couldn't do any of the things that I had planned for her. So I get it. The situation sucks, but the longer we resist and fight staying away from each other, the longer this virus will continue to run rampant. So in these trying times, when all we want to do is be around other people and continue to live our lives the way that we used to, it's important to have discipline. We must practice mind over matter. Mind over matter is the use of willpower to overcome physical problems. The phrase mind over matter first appeared in 1863 in the Geological Evidence of the Antiquity of Man by Sir Charles Lyell, and was first used to refer to the increasing status and evolutionary growth of the minds of animals and man throughout Earth's history. It's a very common phrase used these days, especially when it comes to a person who's feeling overly fatigued while performing a physical feat. Now, I can remember a handful of times in my own life where I've used this phrase. It was mostly during football practice when I was doing conditioning. It sucked. I hated it. But I would tell myself, mind over matter. You can do this. Keep going. And I would. The ability to convince your mind that you can achieve something when everything else around you, including your own body, says otherwise is astounding. We spend most of our lives, quote unquote, in our heads, processing the world and other people through our own beliefs and biases. Yet, most of us understand very little about how our brain actually works and what they're actually capable of. Neuroscientist, medical doctor, and leadership coach Tara Swart has studied this topic extensively, and she offers these 3 tips on how to overcome our physical limitations. Number 1, focus on enjoying the process. For example, when it comes to drawing, the skill that most people lack is actually seeing and perceiving things like edges and shadows, rather than the drawing itself. Of course, this requires patience, and one way to cultivate it is to try and detach from the outcome and focus on the process. Number 2, practice in low-stakes situations. Obviously, you wouldn't run a competitive race without training. It's something that you work up to until you get comfortable. You can do this when you need to push yourself out of your comfort zone, uh, like for things like public speaking, for example. And number three, give yourself no choice but to do it. Sometimes it is a matter of just exposing yourself as often as you can. You won't get good at networking if you don't force yourself to talk to strangers every now and again. And your language skills aren't going to get better if you don't force yourself to have conversations, even when you think that you might sound stupid. Mind over matter really is as simple as willing ourselves to do what we think is not possible. Not only can mind over matter be used to push yourself through fatigue or to help you draw better, but it can be used to overcome pain as well. Professor Lorimer Mosley, chair in physiotherapy and professor of clinical neurosciences at the University of South Australia, says we need to reframe our understanding of pain. Here's a small clip of him discussing pain and its association with the brain. Take a listen.
Dave Sutton knows what it's like to live with chronic pain. He's battled a debilitating back injury for 20 years.
It was so bad that I was taking nerve tablets to relieve it. I don't cry easily, but there were times when I was crying.
A former Ironman triathlete, he injured his back while running. After 3 operations, he's now sporting metal screws.
When you walk down the street and you come home, you're in so much pain and you just lie there and think there's no end to this pain, you just about give up on life.
A world pain expert is working with UniSA to help sufferers like Dave, challenging the way we approach pain, focusing on the brain.
Your brain determines when something hurts, your brain determines how much it hurts. No brain, no pain.
Professor Mosley says chronic pain is associated with changes in the brain and nervous systems, and to overcome that, the brain needs to be retrained.
If you have something dangerous happening and your brain thinks there's something more important, like you're in a battlefield, your brain doesn't make your arm hurt. I would never say that pain is not real and it's all in your head, but pain is 100% of the time produced by your brain.
The brain is the most powerful thing on the planet. So it's no surprise to me that it can be trained and willed to overcome things like pain and fatigue. But the brain can do so much more than that, though. Your mind controls your thoughts, and your thoughts can have a positive or negative outcome on external objects. There's an experiment that proves this. You take 3 glasses and fill them each with water. Take 3 similar lentils and drop them into each of the glasses. And for 1 week, twice a day, 5 minutes at a time, you send 1 positive thought to 1 glass, 1 negative thought to the second glass, and you ignore the last glass. What the user was able to discover was that the glass that focused on positive thought stayed clean all week. The glass focusing on negative thought was really brown and dirty, and the glass that got ignored was slightly brown and dirty. There's also a New York Times bestseller book that was published called The Hidden Messages in Water that further delves into this experiment. I find it absolutely fascinating how much power our minds have over the world we live in. All right, guys, before I wrap things up, I want to share a clip from a TED Talk with you all that I feel applies to this subject. It is rather lengthy, so bear with me, but it's great and very inspiring. The woman giving the speech is Yamna Rahim from the University of Sharjah. Take a listen.
I'd like to start my talk with a little personal story. A couple of years ago, my grandfather suffered from a heart attack, and ever since then, he's had a fear of a reoccurrence. So much so that he immediately quit smoking. And my grandfather was a chain smoker. He would have over 2 packs of cigarettes a day, and quitting was not even an option. So a few months after his heart attack, he started complaining of a severe chest pain, and he was convinced he was having another heart attack. So we rushed him to the hospital, and the doctors ran some tests and told my grandmother that there was nothing wrong with him. He was in good shape, But somehow he had psychologically managed to convince himself that there was something wrong with him, and thus he'd induce pain on his body. When we told my grandfather that, he refused to believe us. He was adamant it was another heart attack and that he needed treatment. So instead of sending him home, what the doctors did was set him up on an IV containing saline. Do you know what saline is? It's salt solution. It has no therapeutic value whatsoever. But as the saline started passing through his veins, he started getting better. His symptoms started to subside, and he started to recover. Do you know what the doctors used? I mean, how can a patient who's not even sick start to recover? What the doctors used was a little phenomena called the placebo effect. For those of you who don't know what the placebo effect is it's when the doctor treats you using a dummy pill. It looks exactly like the real medicine, but instead it has sugar or saline. It's basically like giving you candy. But because the patient believes that he's receiving the treatment, he convinces his body into recovery. And you might not know this, but the doctors use this a lot as a means of treatment once they categorize the patient as functional. That is, they have no organ malfunction or problem, but they somehow psychologically convince themselves they're sick, and thus they start experiencing the symptoms of the disease. My grandfather's chest pains were induced by his fear of another heart attack, and maybe his hidden fear of death. Fear is debilitating. Fear and the what-ifs that accompany it start to govern us and our actions. What if I can't do this? What if this is too hard for me? What if I embarrass myself? What if I fail? What if this ends like the last time? What if I hurt myself? What if I hurt them? Fear is scary, isn't it? I mean, it's a scary thing. And what we do is we start dictating our future. We start dictating our future based on our fears. Irrational fears. Fears that are just a figment of our imagination. But it is these fears that start to dictate our future and start to refrain us from reaching our full potential. We all have fears. Fear of being alone, fear of darkness, fear of failure, fear of death. My best friend has ornithophobia. She's afraid of birds. Every time one flies by, she freaks out. To have a fear is human nature, but you define yourself as an individual by how you choose to deal with it. Do you control your fears, or do you let your fears control you? Am I going to let my fear of public speaking get in the way of me finishing the speech today? You'll find out. Your brain is just an organ, a powerful organ. It runs your whole body. But it is your mindset that has the ability to construct and reconstruct your dreams and to implement them. And it is your mindset that has the power to overcome your weaknesses and your fears and to achieve success. Because let's not forget, the placebo effect only works when your mind is convinced that it will. Let me share another interesting story with you related to cancer. I'm sure we have all heard about cancer, right? And we all know it's a deadly disease and it has no cure. In 1957, this new drug called cribiosin came out. It was believed to be the wonder drug of that time. They finally thought they had the cure to cancer. So this patient in critical condition begged his doctor to be let into the trial. And as he started taking the medicine, he started recovering, until he figured out that cribiosin had no therapeutic value. When his doctors noticed that, they gave him another medicine and said, well, this is the modified version. Do you know what happened? He started getting better again, until papers were published that cribiosin has no therapeutic value in cancer. The placebo effect is so strong and so powerful that not only has it been used to overcome diseases or in patients who have psychologically handicapped their health, but it can overcome deadly diseases like cancer, a disease that is responsible for millions of deaths every year. It is a matter of taking this little phenomena and applying it into your day-to-day problems. And I know curing diseases, overcoming your fears, achieving whatever it is that you want sounds fancy, doesn't it? Sounds amazing. But do you implement the placebo effect in your life? You dream, you hope, and you commit. Man has moved from the cave to the skies and beyond that. What is it that has induced this change or brought about this change? It is a dream, a thought, a desire to change what is to what could be. So dream, and dream big, and then have unwavering faith that your dream is your true destiny. And once you know that, then you need to start strategizing and start making your game plan and act upon what you want. Because what good is an ideology if it's not put into action? Lying in bed wishing you were 20 pounds lighter is not going to make a difference until you get up and you do something about it. Because like Paul Valery said, the best way to make your dreams come true is to wake up. So wake up and go after what you want. And life isn't perfect, and you might not get what you want immediately in life. Henry Ford, believe it or not, failed 5 times before he became successful. Thomas Edison failed 1,000 times before he got the light bulb right. What these people had was a clear vision and a firm belief in their dreams, and a whole lot of patience and perseverance. And like I said before, failure is scary, and it could be the worst thing that happens to you, or it could be the best and the most liberating thing if you choose to learn from it. So don't hesitate because you're afraid to fail. Rather fail and fail big, but realize that rock bottom could be the firm ground you need to pick yourself up and build your empire.
That's a great message, and she's absolutely right. Our mindsets determine a lot of the outcomes in our lives. So we can either let the fear that we conjure up in our minds rule us, or we can shift our thinking to overcome any obstacle placed in our way. The decision is entirely ours. Thank you all for tuning in to another episode of the Third Eye Podcast. I hope you found this episode to be informative and enlightening. I hope you all stay safe during these troubling times, and remember that we all can do our part in helping to flatten the curve. Practice social distancing. Don't go out into large crowds unless absolutely necessary, and please wash your hands and refrain from touching your face. I think we all should use this time to strengthen our bonds with the ones we live with. Use this time to call those who you haven't spoken to in a while. Also, use this time given to us to enrich yourself. Read a book. Research a topic you've always been interested in. Do something productive. And most importantly, try to remain positive. Better times are ahead of us. I'm sure of it. I love you all, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. Be kind and love one another. Thank you, and have a good night.